Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as an MP representing a Southern constituency, I believe it's important that I add my voice to this very important resolution. Mr. Speaker, the resolution before the House is to seek additional funds from the Caribbean Development Bank, namely $7,378,000 for financing the Vieux Fort water project. It is pointed out in the resolution, Mr. Speaker, that Parliament authorized the Minister for Finance by statutory instrument number 27 of 2015. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I repeat the year, to borrow from the Caribbean Development Bank in 2015 an amount not to exceed $19,675,000 for the purpose of financing the redevelopment of Vieux Fort water supply project. Mr. Speaker, 6 years later, Mr. Speaker, we are coming to this honorable House to borrow an additional $7,378,000. A project that should have been completed a very long time ago, Mr. Speaker. The people of Vieux Fort should have been enjoying an improved water supply, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I live in the community of Auger, on that same line that we feed in from the Grace intake. And most of the time, Mr. Speaker, I do not have water. So I can appreciate, Mr. Speaker, the importance of this project and why I felt that the project should not have remained in the holding pattern for 6 years. But elections are fast approaching. There is a mad rush. A project that was put in the holding pattern for whatever the reason. And I am hoping that they will come and clarify. Vieux Fortians had to endure untold suffering for that period of time, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, it is important for me to give some background and context to the Vieux Fort water supply redevelopment project. And in particular, WASCO, Mr. Speaker. When the Labour Party came into office in 2011, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party inherited what for all intents and purposes was a bankrupt WASCO. WASCO could not pay its bills. In fact, many times, the government had to pay the electricity bill for WASCO. WASCO had no money, Mr. Speaker. WASCO was having problems paying its suppliers and had a working capital deficit. More fundamentally, Mr. Speaker, WASCO had to undertake a massive capital investment program, which included the desilting of the dam and improving water in the southern and eastern regions of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, WASCO had no money and no bank would have lent WASCO money because its balance sheet was in a mess. I am proud to say, Mr. Speaker, that the Labour Party undertook a major restructuring of WASCO. In order to understand how it was possible, Mr. Speaker, for the loan for the Vieux Fort water supply project to be approved by the CDB, it is important to understand and appreciate the sound policy decisions that the government of the Labour Party in 2011-2016 implemented to restructure WASCO, Mr. Speaker. In this context, Mr. Speaker, I wish to quote the Honorable Dr. Kenny D. Anthony in his 2013-2014 budget address. I quote, "WASCO has the mandate to provide potable water and wastewater services for the island. However, WASCO continues to face a number of challenges which limit its ability to efficiently fulfill this mandate. The company's weak financial position during the period 2005 to 2012 significantly constrained its operations. WASCO's position was further compromised by the extensive damage to the water infrastructure following Hurricane Thomas. This included damage to access routes and production facilities, storage tanks, water transmission and distribution mains and pumping facilities. Unquote. Mr. Speaker, note that the period in which WASCO's financial position deteriorated and which government was in office for the larger part of that period. He went on to say, quote, "The company now carries a high debt burden, an unviable liability to asset ratio, and a large stock of doubtful debt estimated to be $32 million. Prior to the recent review, rates were last changed 13 years ago, in the year 2000. The previous rate was unable to generate sufficient revenue to even allow for a recovery of operating costs, resulting in a major liquidity crunch and an inability to service its debt, conduct routine maintenance, or finance the replacement of depreciated assets. Currently, the company is insolvent with total liabilities greater than total assets. This greatly impairs the company's ability to raise much needed financing and therefore its capacity to invest in future assets. The government has given extensive assistance to WASCO over the years. 1, the payment of principal and interest on outstanding loans of $106.6 million. 2, total advances of $19 million during the period 2008 to 2012 to assist with operating costs. Not the period, Mr. Speaker, and which government was in office for the greater part of that period. 3, a commitment of $7 million to assist in rural system improvements, of which $4.95 million has been disbursed. 4, a sum of $3.1 million to assist with the restoration of the John Compton Dam, with a commitment to mobilize a further amount. And 5, payment of about $9 million in outstanding arrears to Lucilec. Given the current fiscal constraints, government cannot maintain this level of assistance to WASCO. Every effort must be made to bring the company onto a more sustainable path. Therefore, the government proposes to implement a series of measures which will seek to chart a new course for WASCO. Returning WASCO to a more sustainable position will require the creation of an environment to explore a public-private partnership PPP arrangement to finance the company's medium to long-term strategic plan. This would require the following actions to complement the recent tariff decision. 1, restructuring of the balance sheet through some form of debt equity swap. 2, internal reorganization of the administrative and technical operations of WASCO. And 3, the creation of an appropriate legal framework to govern the management and operations of WASCO, unquote. He then went on to expand on these proposals, Mr. Speaker. In respect of the debt equity swap, the government of St. Lucia forgave debt of $77.6 million owed by WASCO and $26 million in accrued interest in exchange for equity holdings in the company. This, Mr. Speaker, increased the company's capital and thereby increased its attractiveness to private capital, including loans. This, Mr. Speaker, was fundamental and paved the way for WASCO to receive loans from multilateral organizations like the CDB. The second fundamental decision, Mr. Speaker, was an increase in the tariff of WASCO to allow the company to meet the expenses that it was spending more than it was earning, and the tariff increase allowed WASCO to pay for the dredging of the dam through a dredging fee. Mr. Speaker, this increase in tariff was used by those on the other side to play politics, which is what they are very good at, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the same thing with the VAT. Whilst they opened the VAT office and staffed the VAT office, when VAT was implemented, they attacked the Labour Party for VAT. They even wanted to eliminate the VAT, Mr. Speaker. They can now say, thank God for the VAT, because without the VAT, the government would not be able to pay civil servant salaries and debt. After undertaking these measures, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party government, led by the Honorable Dr. Kennedy Anthony, was able to approach CDB for loans for the desilting of the John Compton Dam, the Dennery Water Project, and the Beaufort Water Supply Project. In his 2015-2016 budget address, Dr. Kennedy Anthony said the following in relation to the Beaufort Water Supply Project. And I quote, "The Beaufort and Dennery Water Supply redevelopment projects are well on their way to successful execution with loan financing from the Caribbean Development Bank and grant financing from the Mexican government. The expected outcome of these projects is the provision of efficient, safe, and sustainable supply of potable water to the residents and businesses in the communities of Beaufort and Dennery North," unquote. He went on to say, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "The water supply system which serves Beaufort, Labrie, and environs comprises water abstracted from the Grace and Beausejour intakes on the Grand Ravine de Vieux River. The communities served consist of approximately 4,300 households. The water supply has been unreliable in both the dry and rainy season due to the vulnerability of the systems to rainfall variability. Moreover, during periods of intense rainfall, the turbidity level of the raw water rises significantly above acceptable levels. The Beaufort project will comprise the installation of new water production, transmission, and storage facilities, as well as non-revenue water reduction measures for the Beaufort water supply system. Other project components include technical assistance to enhance the operational efficiency of WASCO through the preparation of an energy-efficient improvement plant, preparation of a watershed management plan, and assistance to improve the capacity of the Water Resource Management Agency to monitor the Beaufort River watershed. The total allocation for this financial year is $6.37 million, unquote. So this project, Mr. Speaker, should have started in 2015-2016. And if it did start at that time, Mr. Speaker, this project would have been completed to the benefit of the people of Beaufort. But the government was more interested in changing contractors for whatever the reason, wasting time and significant money in the process. Only contribution of this government was to spend $7 million on an administrative building in Beaufort. The same site that we had prepared to erect an administrative center to serve the people of Beaufort, to decentralize services. They found no other place to go and put a little office, but on that very site, that significant preparation had been done for the erection of an administrative center, essentially trying to block any opportunity for an administrative center to be erected on that same site. Anyway, the Beaufort people will take care of that in due course. And certain things that cannot be prosecuted in a court of law may be able to be dealt with in the court of public opinion, Mr. Speaker. Now the current Minister for Finance is asking for an additional US $7,378,000, an increase of approximately 37.5%, Mr. Speaker. And I must ask, is this increase cost overruns? Because I may have missed what the Prime Minister said in his introduction. Of course I know what was approved. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, nowadays, you don't even know what projects cost, really. You don't even know what projects cost. You don't even know. There are many projects we don't know what it's going to cost. And whilst the member for Castries South is saying, I'm hoping that when he's making his presentation, he will tell us how much St. Jude's will cost, Mr. Speaker. He will tell us. Because most of the times we come to this house, we ask questions and we get no responses. Government has now become famous for implementing design, finance, construct projects. But I wish to end, Mr. Speaker, by saying that the Vieux Fort Water Supply Project is a much needed project for the people of the South. And I, Alva Romanus Baptiste, give my fullest support to the project. However, I'm hoping that the Prime Minister would clarify further in terms of the $7,378,000. He will speak to it. But, Mr. Speaker, none of us in the southern part of the island would try to come in this house and reduce this project to insignificance. When we complete that project, it is going to be great, it will serve us, and we fully support the redevelopment of the South in terms of water. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the floor.